Hey guys, Kevin back for the Knick, Season 2, Episode 4, Wonderful Surprises. I was definitely looking forward to this episode. I mean, last week's episode had a really great cliffhanger. I really didn't know what was going to be in this episode, and this was by far the best episode of the season. I mean, I really like the focus on this episode. It mainly focused on how all the women in this show are treated. It's a very important subject, and I think they addressed it very well in this episode. Particularly for whoever played Lucy. I don't know her name, but she truly was amazing in this episode. Everyone was great. There were so many great twists in this episode. Let's just get into it because it was an amazing episode as usual, and the season continues to be fantastic. So, as we know, Paul, Algernon's wife, had just randomly come back to his apartment, and he brings her back to his apartment. Well, she came back to, New York from England, and he shows her around, and she's very upset about keeping her a secret from his family because she can tell that, she's a secret, that his family doesn't know. And he says he didn't tell anyone and that she knows there must be another woman in his life. And she says, a man, and I agree what she says here. She can tell that there's someone else in his life because obviously he doesn't really want to talk to her. He doesn't really want anything to do with her. And she says a man stops writing to his woman for two reasons. Either he's dead or he's moved on. And he seems to have moved on. And she asks who the woman is without revealing. And I like the way that Algernon plays this. He doesn't say her name because obviously if he says her name, he knows that Paul's probably going to go after her. And you can tell that Paul is just really powerful. Like, she definitely is very powerful in her words. And he doesn't say who the woman is, of course, it is Cornelia. But he does say that there was someone else. He also reveals this woman became pregnant, terminated the pregnancy before going on to marry someone else. She asks if he still loves her, and he says he's sorry. He should have written her letters, and so she knew to move on and save her the time and expense of coming there. He says he will pay for all of it, and he will return any divorce fees. And she says he will not run off that easily. He will not let her run off that easily. She has never let anyone tell her when it's time to walk away, and he is no exception, and she's not going anywhere. So she does tell him, though, that she's keeping what's hers, and she says she assumes he only has one bed, not to experience any wonderful surprises, not to expect any wonderful surprises, meaning sex, anytime soon. And, Paul is just great. I really like her character. Again, yes, she does get a bit annoying, but definitely towards the end of the episode, I definitely really did like her. So, basically, Henry then kisses this random woman, Daisy. He's basically with this woman, Daisy, probably who is a nurse, because of course, Lucy turned him down. I like that he's moved on. He's not trying to pursue Lucy. I was a bit surprised with that, but, Lucy told him to move on, so I like that he actually respected her wishes. Which, she's kind of being a hypocrite because she didn't respect John's wishes, because, remember, she was obsessed with John, but basically, we then see that she tells him to kiss him some more. He says they will. He shows her a new camera he's gotten and tells her to remove her clothes so that he will have a nude photo of her always. She starts to strip. He tells her that's great, and you can tell that she's a bit hesitant, but she does it anyway. And it really shows how manipulative I think men were of women then. Just that one scene really does show that. So John continues to test on the pig for syphilis. We mainly focus on this plot for most of the episode, the whole syphilis thing with Abby. He informs Abby that his experiments inducing fever on syphilitic pigs to kill the bacteria were successful, and she's very hesitant to do this. She does not know if this is going to work since, it is a pig, and says he can't be certain it will work on her. He says syphilis has the same characteristics no matter who or what has it. So, it could go really well. And she asks if he wants to cook her, and he says that's the essential idea. A pig's normal temperature is 102 and ours is 98. Raising the pig 5 degrees was somewhat easier, but he'd have to raise hers closer to 9. So she asks how he can be certain that he won't kill her in the process. He says it's a risk, but he will be with her the whole time. We'll be ready to inject her if the fever starts to kill her. She's unsure, and he says this is the chance to, kill the disease. It will give her life back, and asks if he can be sure it won't take her life instead. He says he can't, and it's really sad because, he doesn't know if this is really going to work. He wants to, he hopes, but he doesn't know if this is actually going to kill her or not, which is really interesting. So then we see probably one of the most surprising scenes in this episode. But again, guys, because I did read the recap last week for this week's episode, because of course Cinemax had it up, I knew this was coming. And it was still pretty shocking, though, I will tell you guys. Sits up only one nurse. Mays conducts a tracheotomy operation. He talks about his father and how his father was attacked the Knights. And Lincoln was shot, and he was doing exactly what he's doing right now. back then you had to rely on your wits, and he reads the instructions on what to do, and you can tell that he has no idea what he's doing. Maze has no idea what he's doing, and that most likely is why what happens to him here. Basically, she tells him that she's a new nurse. Robertson fired her 2 weeks ago. Hired her 2 weeks ago. He says when he started in practice, each surgeon picked out their favorite nurse and asked her to be exclusive to him in the operating room. No shortage of them end up getting married. And, Maze is a perv. We've seen this before. He asks for the surgical knife and then asks for the cauterizer. She hands it him. He says he'd be happy to have her assigned to him. She'd be his, so to speak, and he's going to be very helpful securing a long future for her at the Knick. He accidentally grazes the electrified cauterizer against the ether mask, and a small spark causes a small sudden explosion and just kills him right on the spot. So Maze was killed for two reasons. One, he was distracted and, obsessed with women. Two, he had no idea what the hell he was doing. So Maze is dead, and yeah, that was pretty surprising. I didn't think they'd kill off Maze this early, but you know what? It makes sense because he just wasn't a very good doctor. He really wasn't. So, and it also shows safety precautions that they didn't really have any safety precautions back then. So Cornelia's with the woman of the Knick. She's bored out of their mind. They're talking about napkins and flowers. I mean, how bored can you possibly be? They just start talking about, should we have the napkins, should we have the flowers? And she's clearly distracted by spate. She doesn't really want to focus on anything else. Birdie, very interesting stuff with Birdie in this episode. As we know, he didn't feel like he had experience from Esther, so he goes to a whorehouse to basically get experience, and he poses a man named Tom Thomas Tom, and he meets Susie. Now, Susie's a prostitute that works there, and she tells him that there's nothing to be nervous about, and she won't bite. He says she's never been to one of these before, and she asks if she saw a gentleman as handsome as he is, she would believe there wasn't a fellow more worldly, and he says he wouldn't describe himself that way. She says this is her first time, so she has never had sex either, and this is her first week on the job, and he is her first client. She saw him come in and asked for him because she thought maybe he could help her through this. He says he knows a lot about anatomy and the human body, and he names off body parts as she starts to remove her clothes. And then she proceeds to give him a blowjob, and he asks if this really is her first time, and she says that it is with him, so she lied to him. I thought that was kind of funny. Lucy, by far, though, I think had the best stuff of this episode. I really loved everything going on with Lucy. Lucy checks John for needle marks. She's trying not to cry. You can tell that she was really affected, obviously, by what AD did to her. Because, AD beat her. He beat his own daughter, and you really see that effect on her in this episode. She's not in a very good state of mind right now. Because John can tell right away that something is wrong with her. And he asks her what's happened. She says she's fine. But John doesn't believe her. She says it's none of his business. And he says it's medical, not personal. And she tells him straight out that AD beat her because she confessed her sins and humiliated him. And he says the next time he sees him, but Lucy says there isn't going to be next time because AD is now left for New York and he left to go back home. He says he would have hurt him a lot worse than he hurt her. She asks if he thinks he's the one that hurt her, and I think it's interesting that she said that because in many ways, it is kind of herself that did it because, she was obsessed with John. She wasn't afraid to she didn't want to let him go. And I think it definitely is very interesting. John hurt her as well because, he broke things off. So I can understand why Lucy says, he's not the one that hurt me. Because, John was really the one that started all this. He broke things off with her. And I think that definitely is very interesting. So Gallinger is then at the hospital, tells a mother that her son needs to have his tonsils removed, and she asks if he can look over her kids, and he says it's her children. She had them, they're her responsibility, but they can't stay there. They just don't want a bunch of kids there. I mean, it would make sense. Why would you want to look after a bunch of kids when you have other patients to worry about? Like, it's not the best idea. I know what the mother's trying to do, but it's just not a good idea to keep her kids there when there's a bunch of other patients. So Algernon says he doubts that Barrow would want to add this room for the tour he's been giving to donors. He asks what Abby says, and John says she's considering it in the meantime. He's considering, he's continuing with his addiction studies. And Algernon asks if there's anything he found. He says, as far as he can tell, addicts have no difference in their organs to non-addicts. And there's nothing that makes them more satiable to addiction and nothing to be removed or treated for a cure. And Algernon says, given the exterior state, which they found in most of the drugs, you would assume that the interior would tell some kind of tale as well. And John says, aside from the typical scarring of the liver, nothing, even in his examination of May's corpse, was inconclusive. And that man was not clear, was most certainly a drinker, if there ever was one. And basically, there's nothing's working out for him. He can't get anything out of his research, unfortunately, which really sucks because obviously John wants to know what's going on, but he's not finding anything. And Algernon says that he at least relieved that his death occurred on John's watch and not on his. And John says something is making them do it. If it's not the body, it must be the brain, and he's going to find out more what's going on there. So Barrow tells Henry that the fire insurance will cover the damage of the surgical theater because the surgical theater is destroyed. It's destroyed, it's blown up, they need to get a new one, and he has started a memorial fund in Mays' name. Henry asks if that's for the benefit of the widow, and he says it's for the new Knick, and many of Mays' friends of the club have already donated generously to the new fireproof room that will be added to the new hospital with his permission, of course, and Henry said it's a filling tribute. And Barrow is then forced to inform the men at Tammany Hall about his skimming scheme on the construction costs for the new Knick Hospital. And basically, he's told that in order to ensure all continues smoothly, he has to cut them in on the deal. He has to let them know what's going on. They said they will help him out as long as he, informs them on what he actually is doing. Because obviously, they don't want him doing things against their discretion. That's just not the right thing to do. I was surprised that they weren't as pissed as I thought they were going to be, though. So, Lucy's then visited by a friend, and this was by far one of the most crucial scenes of the episode, and I really did love this scene. Her friend says that she has moved in and with her friend, she's basically moved in with her, because now she's left. Obviously, her father left, so she asks what she's reading, and Lucy tells her it's a book about women's bodies. Since Mays died, she's had to handle all of Pingu's prostitutes on her own, and she reads from some of the book. And her friend is grossed out. She asks if she wants to be a doctor. Lucy says there are no women doctors. She says it's time they find one, and that's true. I mean, we were talking about this in my history class. There are many jobs that women couldn't have. One of them was being a doctor. And Lucy clearly does want to be the first woman doctor. And Lucy says that, she's not smart enough. And she's just, been brought up that she's not smart enough, that she's not educated enough. And she says she's smart enough to treat the patients on her own. She hasn't killed any of them yet. And maybe she knows more than she thinks. And I really like her friend's advice here. This really makes Lucy change a lot of things, definitely. So Cornelia and Henry arrive at their parents' home for a surprise lunch. Philip is on the phone, tells him to get off since it's lunchtime. Cornelia says it's a nice surprise since the whole family gets to have lunch here. That's what she thinks it's for. But Henry says that that's not the surprise. The surprise is actually in the other room. It's actually for the celebration of Algernon and his wife. And Cornelia, of course, is very surprised to learn about Algernon's wife, and Henry says he went off and got married, introduces Opal to Cornelia. And at lunch, her mom recalls a memory of her and Cornelia in Paris, and Opal is being very critical of the Robertson family. She's being very critical. She doesn't like what they're saying. She clearly has never seen white rich people, ever. I mean, you can just tell. So they praise Algernon for all of his accomplishments and hard work, and they're proud of him. And Opal says if that's the case, then why aren't Algernon's parents included in the lunch? And she says if this is a celebration, why can't they stay with them at the house waiting for a bell to be run? And he says that's not how it's done. And on the way back, Algernon berates Opal for her rudeness. She asks if she's not allowed an opinion, or is that too progressive? He says she was trying to pick a fight, and she says the Robertsons talk as if they are responsible for his success instead of him. And he says they were proud of him, and he's proud of what they did for him. And I really do agree with Algernon. I mean, they were just congratulating him. Algernon's always been like a part of the family for them. That's why they're congratulating him. There's been a big difference, and it was unfair. She says she's sorry for being unfair to rich white people. And again, she really doesn't agree with what's going on, but she's going to have to accept it because she's in New York. That's how it is now. So John then talks to a man who clearly is an alcoholic, and he says he can help him, which the man is not interested in, but he says he can get him free clothes and 3 meals a day, and a much more comfortable bed than the one he's sleeping on. He says if he buys him beer, he will let him know. And John then sees Kate dancing with another man, and he looks kind of upset, although it didn't seem like he wanted emotional attachment. It does seem like he's a bit upset that she's moved on so quickly. So, in a shabby apartment, Cleary was such a badass in this episode. Cleary was awesome. Not that Cleary wasn't awesome already, but especially this episode, Cleary was awesome. We see all of these women going to this apartment. We don't know what it's for. And we see that Cleary has basically gathered every single woman that has sought out Harriet for an abortion in the past. And he says he's glad they can make it, although most would think they've gone shopping at the hair parlor. And one of the ladies says she doesn't want to be her because of him. And he says he doesn't give a good goddamn. He says they're not out there anymore. There is he and they're in her. He explains to them Harriet's situation, and they say it's not their concern. And he says to make it their fucking concern. And he says each and every one of them came to him for a fix. And they don't really want to be there because obviously they just don't want to be involved in this because obviously Harriet's a fugitive right now and she has a really bad reputation. And they don't want to help her out. But I like what Cleary says. They basically need help her. They came to her for these abortions. They are at fault as much as Harriet is. If they would not have come to her for these abortions, Harriet would not have performed these abortions. And basically, Harriet did it for him, and basically, he says he knows how honest Harriet can be, and that her conscience will get in the way and tell everything she's done. They ask what he wants from them since they can't stop the trial, and he instructs the women to tell the influential men who got pregnant to exert pressure on the judge, and if they don't, he threatens that Harriet might have a bout of conscience and start naming names on the stand, which I think is very smart, definitely. Basically, they have to do this or else they're going to be blamed as well, and they'll probably be faced with some sort of trial as well, so very smart of him to do. I really like what Cleary's doing there. Cornelia is not even sure if this is going to work, and he does say that they're, his good is as good as hers. And he says as far as he's concerned, they're even on favors now, and they shake on it, and that was just awesome what Cleary did there. That was awesome stuff. I mean, the lengths that he's going just to help out Harriet is great. John gives the alcoholic a hot bath, but has another addict in there. He says they're going to make sure the medicine is kept far away from them because obviously they're addicted. So he's told there's emergency, and it's Abby. Abby has decided to come to the hospital. She has had a seizure, and she says she insisted they bring her there. He thanks the doctor, and basically that seizure was the last straw. Now she knows that she needs this help, and he says he'll take over. She says she's very embarrassed. She was making breakfast, and the next thing she knows, she has cracked eggs all over her hair, and she's very scared. John says he knows. She goes through the procedure. He says it should be a while before the malaria takes effect. She says she's looking forward to it. Lucy then walks outside and has what I think is the best scene of the episode. This scene was incredible. She is talking to someone. She has a monologue saying her whole life, every man she's supposed to respect and honor have all disappointed her and betrayed her, thrown her away, and we realize that she's actually talking to Harriet, and she asks why they let them do it. It doesn't make any sense. She's sick of it. Harriet says God tastes us all. Lucy says she knows she's not getting what she wants. She asks what she thinks it is she deserves. And Lucy simply says something better. She doesn't want this anymore. She wants something better. She doesn't want men to drive her life. She wants to make decisions on her own. She wants to become a legit doctor. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with Lucy. I really love where they're headed with this. This is really good stuff, I have to say. So Barrow's then at the meeting for the membership that Maze was supposed to be a sponsor for, but of course, since he's dead, a dead man can't sponsor a live one, so Barrow pretty much is shit out of luck. He's completely out of luck, and I don't know what's going to happen now, because obviously, this was something that Maze was going to sponsor, but now Maze is dead, so what he gonna do, I don't know. So Algernon takes Opal to a club that is strictly for black people, and Opal isn't sure they will take him to the new Knick, but he assures her of their loyalty. He tells her they are in Harlem, and this scene went a completely different route than you think it's going to go, and I love that. He's approached by his friend Russell, dances with Opal. She tells him he has a gray hair, shows him where it is. He says he has terrible disease. It's called aging, and they bond really well. They bond over the fact that he's getting older and she's getting older, and she says if, he talks about wrinkles, she'll break his fingers. And it's just a really great scene. They're bonding really well. I didn't expect them to bond really well at all. In fact, I expected them to be at each other's throats, but surprisingly, they're not. They're actually very cordial to each other, and I really like that. So Birdie's with his family, and he basically tells them all about his practices in the lab, and he's being let out of the lab, but only for one procedure, and explains what it's for. His mom thinks he has passed Zimberg's test. His father's kind of unsure, though, and he asks his mom if she's alright because she's coughing. She says she's fine. But then, with his father, this is really, really sad. He says she's had a condition that has... And also, his father says he's a man now, so most people are thinking that his father's the one that got him to that whorehouse, because obviously a man means you've had sex. Back then, that's what it meant. So, basically... He says she's had a condition that has been going on for a while. They've been to every hospital she has, and basically, an esophageal mass, and he sees the operating photo and says they have to remove it, but there's no procedure. Basically, if it comes out, it kills her. If it stays in, it kills her. No matter what, it's going to kill her. So he asks if she knows, and he says he hasn't told her yet, but his mother was an exceptional nurse in the day and knows something is very wrong. So he talks to Zimberg about it and tells him his mother is only 49. And Zimberg says the best they can do for her is to make her as comfortable as possible. There are opiates to ease her pain. And Birdie says he's not ready to surrender just yet. He came in the morning hoping he'll find a procedure that is from Promise. And Zimberg says promise is not proof. That's true. Promise just means promise. It just means that, it could be something good. It doesn't mean it will be. It could help. And he said that's all hope, and he says he needs to look at it further. He says as long as it doesn't take away from his duties there, but he cautions him that he shouldn't let it cloud his judgment, and it's just not a safe thing to do. So back at the Robertson house, Cornelia is told by Philip that he has to do some traveling for his father, and she asks where he's going. He says he's going to Lima, Ohio, for an oil refinery, and no one is lighting with kerosene anymore because of Edison, and he says they need to find a use for the oil and shut it down. He says he should be gone for a few months, and his mom assures that they will take good care of Cornelia, and again, you can tell that Cornelia probably wants to go with him because, again, she doesn't want to be the common woman. You can tell that Cornelia is very much like Lucy. She doesn't want to be a common woman. She wants to do things that women aren't allowed to do, and I really like seeing that. So Dorothy tells Eleanor she has to run a few errands and will be back shortly. Then they'll have lunch. Eleanor then leaves the house, probably for fresh air, and walks down the street. Some boys ask her for change. She says to leave her alone. She trips and falls. And that was pretty crazy when that happened. I mean, the fact she just tripped and fell like that. So Abby is shivering. John says her temperature is only 103, up 2 degrees since this morning, so it's not working. She's only thrown up 4 times. Already, headaches are constant. He doesn't think she's going to get any better anytime soon. He says he thought all they had to deal with was a hurricane, but now they've added a twister in the mix. And Gallinger then called about Eleanor, who tells him she tried to get away but tripped and fell, and they followed her. He asks if she's hurt. She says she doesn't think so. He asks where Dorothy is, and she says she had an appointment. Didn't know she'd gone out. She apologized to him, says she just wanted fresh air. He asks what happened to the thieves. They tell him one slipped into a sewage drain, but they have the other right there. He asks to see the boy. This boy's name is Paolo, and he tells him to stand him and hits him, calls him a bastard child, and again just shows how he will do anything for his wife. It's a great scene. I love the measures that Gallinger will go to protect his wife, and you kind of see that Eleanor doesn't really want that protection. Again, very much like Lucy and Cornelia, she doesn't want that protection. So Harriet's trial begins, and she asks where Whiting is, and Cleary says he didn't have the money for him, so he's not going to be there. And Harriet says he doesn't think he will defend her, and she can't defend herself. And the judge tells her to shut her trap and just dismisses the case. Even though the jury isn't okay with it, they dismiss the case. So basically, she's not going to... So basically, I guess Cleary's plan worked out. Awesome. They dismissed the case very well. So I like that the judge thought of probably what Whiting said. What Whiting said, and also Cleary's whole thing that he did, I think that helped out as well. But we still don't know who this person is that's paying off the boxers, the boxer for Cleary. Who is doing this? We don't know. So, let's figure out what's going on there. John checks on Abby, and the syphilis is still there. Algernon asks what her temperature is now. He says it's 106, and obviously, that is very dangerous. If your fever goes beyond 106, you're most likely going to die. And John says it needs to go higher. Algernon says she's cooking to death, and they need to move quickly. John says he needs to think, and he tells him he's frying her brain. John tells him to continue, but then at the last second takes Abby and puts her into the fever cabinet and says this will get it higher. Algernon says this will kill her. John says this alternative isn't much better. More seizures, spasms, headache that felt like knives. And I agree with what he's saying. The alternative isn't going to be better. She's going to suffer no matter what. And Algernon begs to end it, but John says it's not over till he says it. He has Algernon give her more than malaria, puts her in the bathtub, puts ice in the bathtub, because he wants to make sure this works out. So Harriet and Cleary offer to give, Harriet and Cleary then leave the trial, and Cleary offers to give Harriet a ride around town and offers to buy her food, but he says there's nothing better than being free. She climbs into the automobile. He says they will get a piece of pie on the way home, courtesy of him, and he offers her to even move in with him, but she declines. She doesn't want that. She says He says that she needs a place, but not a man. He says it's on the up and up. Besides, the church isn't watching her anymore. They're not lovebirds. They would be roommates sleeping in different rooms. And as fun as that could be, she doesn't want that. She says how there is a house for fallen girls, and she wants to go there. So, unfortunately, she does want to get the pie, though. I like what Cleary's trying to do, but I like that he let Harriet make her own decision. He says, as long as you're happy, I'll let you do that. And I thought that was just a really great scene. I definitely really love all the scenes between Harriet and Cleary. I could honestly just watch a show around them. Like, I really wanted to move in because I could really watch a show around Harriet and Cleary, and I really do love them as friends, and it's one of the best parts of the show by far. Their friendship is great. So, then we see Robert's mother goes to Robert's mother. I mean, yeah, no, Philip's mother. Why did I say Robert? Philip's mother goes to bed, and once she does, Cornelia sneaks out, and Harriet then goes to the house, to the school, basically to the house of fallen girls. And the sister there does not want her there at all. She says she gets one meal a day. She has a week to find a job, starts paying towards her keep. She will also be responsible for 20 hours of work around there every week. Harriet says she's a decent cook and she was a nurse. She says she's on toilets. She says they didn't want her there. It's only by the grace of her Christian hearts that they could come there. They give her a bed that is just a mattress, and despite the conditions, she still seems like she wants to work here, which is interesting. So Gallinger then speaks with an old Penn classmate, Drexler, about the ordeal. Drexler brings up the findings of the eugenics movement and with it the idea of sterilization, and I think that definitely is very interesting. So Cornelia then walks up to the Spate family house and goes inside the house, and this man keeps watching her. Who this man is, I think, is the man responsible for Spate's death or responsible for something that has to do with that. I don't know exactly who he is, but I feel like definitely he has connections to Spate's death. She looks for any kind of evidence she could find, gets away from the man, and luckily she got away. So then we see the final scene in this episode, which truly was something amazing. John sleeps, thinks of him and Abby on the boat together. That the boat that he keeps picturing that girl that he killed on, now he's picturing Abby on it. And, he's thinking that she's going to die and that he's going to lose her. But then she wakes up, he kisses her forehead, she's free of syphilis, and that's how the episode ends. So overall, guys, a really powerful episode, definitely. Some really great stuff here. Let's talk about Abby, because now she's free of the syphilis. What's going to happen here? I definitely like how, most of this episode, like I said, was all about these choices that women want to make on their own. Especially Lucy. Is Lucy possibly going to become a doctor? I mean, obviously, we know the suffragette movement is eventually going to happen, so that will eventually give Lucy the opportunity to become a doctor. We'll have to see if that happens, if Lucy does become a doctor. I really hope she does, because that'd be really great for her, but because of conditions, I don't really know. I hope things work out well for Lucy. Who is this man following Cornelia? We'll have to see. I don't know who he is. I don't know what connection. He definitely, like I said, has a connection to Spade's death. I don't know what kind of connection he has, but I definitely know that he's not to be trusted. Harriet at this school is going to be interesting to see what happens with her, definitely, because obviously there are a lot of conditions she has to face. Is she possibly going to move in with Cleary? I could see that, like, if she leaves, maybe then she moves in with Cleary. We'll have to see. I don't really know what's going to happen with that. She clearly isn't as close with Cleary as he is with her. I don't think it's a romantic thing. I think he just thinks they're a lot closer than they are, which is quite interesting. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. As far as Birdie, is Birdie going to find a cure for his mother for this, is he going to find something to help her out? Again, like Zimberg says, he shouldn't let this cloud his judgment. He shouldn't think too fondly of it, and he should be really careful. So we'll have to see what happens with that. What is Barrow going to do? Obviously, he can't get this membership because he's out of luck, so who is he going to go to? I'm not really sure. He's probably going to have to go to, like, Ping Wu or something, honestly. We'll have to see, because we know he owes a shit ton of money still to Ping Wu, and that's why he's been so frugal with his money, so we'll have to see what happens with that. That's going to be very interesting. Eleanor is still crazy, obviously. We know she's crazy. We'll have to see. It doesn't seem like she's going to get better anytime soon, which really sucks, but that's what it seems like is going to happen there. John and the addicts is very interesting. What he's doing, recruiting these addicts, it's going to be interesting to see what he does with that. It looks like next week it's going to get really crazy. There's going to be, like, children, coming into the Knick and things like that. And then John seeing Kate, I found that interesting because it seems like he's upset that Kate's moved on, even though he didn't want to be with her. You know, John had his chance to be with her, but now he's upset that she moved on. We'll have to see what happens with that. But overall, guys, amazing episode. Also, what's going on with Algernon and Opal? It seems like these two are actually getting a lot closer. It seems like things are actually better between them than we thought they would be. And I actually really like Algernon and Opal. We'll have to see what happens with that. Is Algernon going to confess to Opal that Cornelia is the woman? He has to at some point. I mean, he can't hold that back. He needs to tell her, look, Cornelia is the woman, and that, you know, I've been hiding this from you. I'm sorry I have. He just needs to tell her the truth, because, you know, I think she obviously won't be nice about it, but he needs to tell her because it happened, and he needs to accept that. So we'll have to see what happens with that. But overall, guys, amazing episode, best episode of the season. Let me know what you guys saw this episode. Just, this show is on a roll, definitely. I've been loving every episode so far this season. And we'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for Girl Meets World. Yes, I will watch it. I'm sorry I haven't gotten a chance to watch it, but I will watch it, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.